Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith and you're watching another episode of Overbooked here on the channel. This is the series where I talk about every single book on my shelves because I've been ordered to by my superiors. Today we are talking about Annalee Newitz, The Terraformers. Yes, I often forget whether there's a the or not. This one there's a the. Some intro music could get me out of this situation. Some quick disclaimers before we start. I was sent this copy of this book for free from the publisher. Regardless of where books come from, nobody's paying me to talk about books and all opinions are my own. Luna is playing with a squeaky toy downstairs. I don't want to hinder her fun. I'm going to keep this as spoiler-free as humanly possible while still talking about the book as a whole. If you do want to go in knowing absolutely nothing, pause the video, come back when you've read it and we'll talk then. And I will link the story graph for the book down below in case you want to check out any user-generated content warnings. This book originally came out in 2023 and it is another science fiction book from author Annalee Newitz, who has also written Autonomous, which we talked about last week, The Future of Another Timeline, which we talked about a very long time ago, and some other non-fiction bits. Okay, let me hit you with a blurb. Destri's life is dedicated to terraforming Saskia. As part of the environmental rescue team, she cares for the planet and its burgeoning ecosystems as her parents did before her. But the bright, clean future they're building comes under threat when Destry discovers a city full of people that shouldn't exist, hidden inside a massive volcano. As she uncovers more about their past, Destry begins to question the mission she's devoted her life to, and must make a choice that will reverberate through Saskia's future for generations to come. A science fiction epic for our times and a love letter to our future, The Terraformers will take you on a journey spanning thousands of years and exploring the triumphs, strife and hope that find us wherever we make our home. I think the biggest selling point, reason you should read this best bit of this book, is probably the themes, I think. For me personally, that's the most interesting thing. Across the board, that's pretty much been where I've kind of got excited about Annalee Newitz's work. In this, we have very much a theme of land, of ownership, of privatization versus public services, I guess, and gentrification, a big one. Gentrification comes in a big way. And along with that comes that theme of people pushing against that and the impact that can have for the future of a place and how significant actions in the now are for that kind of butterfly effect into the future. I personally find these themes really interesting to engage with. They are something that we've seen before in science fiction, but I think they're done in a very impactful way in this book. I didn't mention, but the book does span multiple generations, and I think the fact that that happens makes it feel much more broad in scope. And if you watched last week's video, or you are coming to this in a period of time where you've read Autonomous, I think Annalee Newitz does a really good job of exploring ideas about the very real world, as in this one that we inhabit now, through science fiction, and it's definitely a book that points at some of those things. It would be a great book club book, it would be a great book to buddy read with other people. We're going to come on to like my criticisms of the book later, but for the themes and for the questions it provokes and the ideas, I do think this would be a really good book to read with other people. Let's talk about that multi-generational aspect. We see this planet Saskia through time. There are 3 separate chunks to the book, each of them kind of getting weirder is probably the word I want to say. More science fiction, less hooked into a reality we would understand as they go, and I think that's really powerful, and I thought it was very interesting. I think the blurb does it a disservice by not mentioning that, because the first chunk of the book I believe is the weakest. I'll come on to it. But that multi-generational aspect, that seeing this world grow and change, is so fitting to tie into the original kind of core beginning of the story, which is seeing a world change very slowly through this process of terraforming, and then on into the way that the world changes, but all of those different things that come in. It's not just the environment anymore, it's the culture, it's the climate, it's as in the climate of like politics and so such, all shifting and being formed as well. I thought that was fascinating as like a theme and an idea running through the book. If you like weird world building, I think this is going to be one for you. This is Annalee Newitz's least connected to our world book. It's very plausible, everything in there very, very plausible, but it's an awful lot to get thrown into, and you kind of have to just get on board with the science fiction of it all. Some of it didn't make any sense to me for a good chunk of time, and I've read this twice. We've got moose, which aren't really moose, but they are interesting. There's a lot of animal stuff going on. There's a lot of things. I guess it does the science fiction thing of explaining something as much as someone who is living in that world would need to understand it. So we're not getting the science of why things work, we're not getting an understanding of this in a really fundamental level. It is, this works and you don't need to know about the science. And I personally like that for the most part. I don't want a big scientific explanation. And I do think it manages to pull it off. I think the fact that it's so anchored in what reality is for these people and these characters, rather than trying to explain it to a reader, definitely makes sense. However, we're coming into it, I do think it makes the book very slow to start. And again, I think that ties into the fact that the blurb and everything doesn't really mention the fact that you're going to move away from Destry as a character. It takes a little while to do so, but you are going to move away. It definitely, to me, reading it both times that I've read it, I really felt the start of the book drag. There's an awful lot to take in, which I'm not the best at the best of times. And it's a lot of understanding complicated dynamics between groups where you don't really understand the groups yet. And it's an intentional thing. It's meant to be dropping you in at the deep end. We've seen this happen in other books. Just for me personally, it does mean that the start of the book is going to be slower. By the end of the book, I was really engaged. I think I definitely felt like the second and third chunks of the book were much stronger. I think also because at that point you have a better sense of what the antagonist or the antagonistic elements of this story are going to look like, where in the first chunk of the book, it's not 100% clear. So yes, confusing and a little bit slow to start, just for me and my preferences. And I felt like I didn't connect in with the characters as much as I have in other Annalee Newitz books. Again, possibly deliberate. This was much more of a thematic exploration kind of story rather than getting into character study in a way that something like The Future of Another Timeline is. However, I just didn't feel super connected to any of them. I was interested, I was invested in their story, just not them as individuals as much as I have been in other things. The other thing I thought was very interesting in this book is there's a lot to do with intelligence assessments and personhood, which also ties back to Annalee Newitt's Autonomous, which we talked about last week. And I thought that in this actually that almost came through much more clearly, those themes and ideas. And it's so tied to the idea of capitalism and empire. I just thought it was a very fascinating theme. Other things you might want to read, comparisons to this. I don't have any really direct comparisons, probably because of that kind of thing that I mention all the time, which is that I've read a fair amount of sci-fi. I've not read oodles of it. I'm trying to think if I know anything that's kind of terraforming-y in the same way, but I don't know that I have. I think thematically around kind of the ideas of empire and culture change, in terms of kind of themes around culture and cultural dominance and the power of the few versus the power of the many, perhaps? Something like the Texas-Clan duology, which I feel like I reference every science fiction video, so maybe it's just that that's my science fiction reference, you know? Show yourselves to me, science fiction books that are similar to this. Show yourselves. I think there's a little bit of similarity between this and Becky Chambers' Monk and Robot duology. That is much more solar punk, hope punk kind of story, where Terraformers is arguably a little bit more, not dystopian, but adjacent to that, I guess. But I do think they share something similar in kind of their conversation about land and, yeah, it's almost sort of like Monk and Robot and this kind of would have come from a similar starting idea. They've just gone in very different directions. Have you read the Terraformers? Do you have plans to? Let me know down in the comments below. While you're commenting, if you haven't already, please do subscribe. It makes me feel loved and appreciated. You can also come hang out on Discord where we have chill chats about books. I'd like to say an enormous thank you to all the ghosts who haunt me over on Patreon. They support the channel and in return get early access to videos, bonus content, live streams and more. If you'd like to join their number, that's linked below as well. Thank you so much to you for watching. That's all from me, and I will see you in the next one. There's gonna be some bloopers now. Destry's life is dedicated to terraforming Sask E as part... Luna. Hello. Give me that so I can throw it back downstairs again. So we don't... Whee! Go get it! Right, where's this actually gonna be? In frame. Pretty much. And I think they're just, again, and I think this is... Are you about to come back up with a different squeaky toy? Give me the squeaky toy. Give me the squeaky toy, I am filming. Oh, what's this? Go get it. Oh, she's back. You've decided you really want to be up here with the squeaky toy. I'm really not gonna... Come here. Oh, honey. Honeybee. Go.